The stars of the galaxy had always been far away from Ryan. He lived a simple life on Earth, working as a quiet artist in a small studio near the coast. While most people chased after money or technology, he preferred to spend hours with his pencils and brushes. He drew ships he had never seen, landscapes that did not exist, and creatures with shining eyes and flowing forms. People said his work looked strange, but to him it felt natural. One evening, while he was sketching by the window, a message arrived on his old communicator. At first, he thought it was a mistake. The glowing seal on the message was not from Earth, but from the Galactic Union of Worlds, the organization that ruled across the stars. The message said he had been chosen to attend the Stellar Showcase, the grandest fashion event in the galaxy, where alien supermodels displayed the culture of their worlds. Ryan almost laughed. He was no one important. He was not a leader, not a soldier, not even a scientist. Why would the Galactic Union invite a man who spent his life drawing strange lines on paper? Yet the seal was real and the message was clear. His presence was requested. When the day came, a transport ship landed near his home. Its surface glowed like silver water, and its ramp opened with a soft hum. Ryan stepped inside with his sketchbook under his arm, the only thing he felt he could bring. The ship soared into the sky, and Earth became a blue sphere behind him. The journey through hyperspace was brief, but dazzling. Light stretched into endless rivers outside the windows. Ryan sat quietly, unsure what to expect. When the ship stopped, he saw a station larger than any city on Earth. Towers rose like crystal spires, floating above a planet with golden clouds. This was Aurelian Station, home of the Stellar Showcase. Inside the station, the halls were filled with beings of every size and shape. Some walked on many legs, some floated with wings of light, and some shimmered like living glass. Each one wore clothing designed to reflect their culture and power. The air buzzed with voices in dozens of languages, but the station translated them into words he could understand. Ryan felt small among them, just a man in a plain shirt and shoes. He noticed some aliens glancing at him with curiosity, others with dismissal. To them, humans were still a young species, untested and ordinary. He kept his head down, holding his sketchbook like a shield. The showcase began in a vast hall with a stage made of shifting light. Hundreds of seats filled with delegates, leaders, and wealthy patrons. Music without instruments filled the air, a sound that seemed to come from the fabric of the hall itself. Then the models appeared. They were not ordinary models. Each was a symbol of their world, chosen not only for beauty but for the pride of their species. Some wore armor that gleamed like stars. Others had gowns woven from energy. Each step they took was like a story, and the crowd watched in silence and awe. Then came Zira. She was from the planet Cirrus, known for its radiant people who were admired across the galaxy. Zira was already famous in hundreds of systems. Her form was tall and graceful, her skin shimmering with soft light, her eyes like clear water. She wore a flowing garment that changed color as she moved, glowing with patterns that seemed alive. The hall erupted in applause as she walked the stage. Delegates leaned forward, capturing every moment. To them, Zira was more than a model. She was a vision of perfection, the face of Cirrus. But as she walked, her eyes caught something unexpected. In the corner of the hall, sitting quietly, was Ryan. He was not clapping like the others, nor staring with wide eyes. He was sketching. His pencil moved quickly over the paper, capturing her image in rough strokes, lines of shadow and light. No one else noticed him, but Zira did. For a moment, her step slowed. She had seen many crowds, many admirers, but never someone who looked at her this way. It was not the look of worship or desire. It was the look of someone who wanted to understand, to see her beyond the light and the fame. After the showcase ended, guests filled the hall with praise and trade. Zira was surrounded by admirers and delegates, yet her mind kept returning to the quiet human with the sketchbook. Finally, when the crowd eased, she slipped away and walked toward him. Ryan was still drawing, his eyes focused on the page. He almost did not notice her until her shadow fell across his paper. He looked up and froze. The most famous being in the galaxy was standing in front of him. "You are human," Zira said, her voice calm but curious. "Yes," Ryan answered softly. "I did not expect to be here." She looked at his sketchbook. On the page was her image, drawn not as a shining icon but as a person with depth and feeling. Her light was captured in rough lines, but it seemed alive in a way no crystal lens could show. You were not watching the showcase, she said. You were creating. I watch better this way, Ryan replied. Your walk had rhythm. Your eyes were steady. The light around you? It is like water reflecting the moon. I wanted to keep it. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Her admirers always spoke of her beauty, her fame, her perfection. No one had ever spoken of her rhythm or her eyes or compared her to moonlit water. She felt something stir inside her, something strange and new. Most would see only the surface, she said softly. You see more, Ryan shrugged. It is just how I draw. Zira smiled, a small but genuine smile. For the first time in many seasons, she felt noticed not as a symbol but as herself. She wanted to speak more, but attendants came to call her. The next part of the event was waiting. Before she left, she turned back to Ryan. Keep drawing, she said. I wish to see more. Ryan watched her go, feeling a mix of confusion and wonder. He was just an artist from Earth, yet somehow he had caught the attention of someone who shone brighter than stars. He looked down at his sketchbook. The lines were simple, imperfect, yet they carried something real. In that moment, he did not know that this meeting would change his life and hers forever. The stellar showcase continued through the night, but Ryan could not forget the moment when Zira, the most admired figure in the hall, had walked up to him and spoken as though he mattered. He sat in the corner with his sketchbook, listening to the voices around him, but his hand kept moving, sketching the faces and shapes he saw. The hall was alive with color and sound. Creatures with wings of light hovered above the crowd. Delegates in long cloaks traded words that carried more weight than gold. Musicians with glowing instruments filled the air with waves of sound. Ryan watched all of it, yet his pencil returned again and again to the image of Zira. He was not sure why. Perhaps it was the way her eyes had paused on him, or the way her voice had sounded less like a star and more like a person. He had never expected anyone like her to notice a quiet human, with nothing but paper and lines. When the final lights dimmed and the showcase ended, guests were led into the side halls for gatherings and exchanges. Food and drink from across the stars were offered, each dish glowing with colors not found on Earth. Ryan stayed near the back, unsure if he belonged. He tasted nothing, choosing instead to watch. Then, to his surprise, Zira appeared again. She moved through the hall with calm steps, her attendants following at a distance. The others looked at her with awe, yet she walked straight past them and stopped before Ryan. You stayed, she said. Yes, Ryan answered. I thought I should not leave too soon. She looked at his sketchbook and he opened it without hesitation. Pages of drawings lay inside, ships, stars, creatures, and people. None of them were perfect, but each had life. She touched one of the sketches with a slender finger, careful not to press too hard. This is not how my people draw, she said. We use light and energy. Our art is perfect, every line exact. But this is different. It feels alive. It is not perfect, Ryan said. That is why it feels alive. Life is not perfect either. Zira tilted her head as though she had never thought of it that way. All her life she had been trained to embody perfection. Her walk, her smile, her gestures, all measured and flawless. Yet here was a human who saw value in what was incomplete. For a moment she sat beside him, ignoring the curious stares of others. The hall was filled with important figures, but her attention was only on the sketchbook and the quiet human holding it. Tell me, she said, why do you draw? Ryan thought for a moment. Because it helps me see. When I draw, I notice things I would miss if I only looked. A shadow, a movement, a feeling. Drawing makes me remember that even small things have meaning. Zira was silent. On her world, people admired brilliance, strength, and beauty. Small things were often ignored. Yet this human spoke of them as treasures. She felt something unusual stir within her chest, a warmth she could not name. Their conversation was interrupted when a tall delegate from another world approached. His form was sharp, his skin metallic, and his voice echoed like steel. Zira, he said firmly, the council waits. It is not wise to spend time with an untested human. Zira turned her eyes on him, calm yet steady. The council will wait. They always do. The delegate frowned but bowed and stepped back. The crowd whispered, shocked that Zira had dismissed such an important figure. Ryan felt uneasy. He did not want to cause her trouble. You do not have to stay, he said quietly. But I wish to, Zira replied. The words were simple, but to Ryan they felt heavy with meaning. She could have chosen anyone in the hall, yet she chose to sit with him. As the hours passed, they spoke more. Ryan told her of Earth, of oceans that roared with waves, forests that sang with wind, and skies that burned red at sunset. Zyra listened with wonder. She had seen hundreds of worlds, but the way Ryan described his home made it sound alive in a way no travel guide could. In return, she told him of Cirrus. She spoke of crystal cities that shone in the night, of rivers that glowed with silver light, and of skies where two moons danced together. But as she spoke, Ryan noticed her tone shift. There was pride in her words, but also a hint of emptiness, as if even beauty could feel lonely when it was endless. "Do you ever tire of being admired?" Ryan asked gently. Zyra looked at him in surprise. No one had ever asked her that. People spoke of her beauty, her fame, her skill, but never of her heart. She looked away for a moment before answering. "Yes," she said softly. "Admiration is light, but it is not warmth. It shines on me, but it does not touch me. Tonight, when you drew me, I felt warmth for the first time." Ryan lowered his eyes, unsure what to say. He had never thought his simple sketches could carry such weight. Yet he understood. Warmth was something he had always sought in his art, the feeling that something was alive. As the gathering ended, attendants came again to call Zyra. This time she stood, but before leaving, she placed a small crystal in Ryan's hand. It was clear and glowing faintly like frozen light. "This is a memory crystal," she said. "It records what the holder feels. Keep it. When we meet again, show me what it has kept." Ryan held the crystal carefully. "We will meet again?" Zyra smiled, her eyes bright. "Yes, I will find you." With that, she left, her figure disappearing into the crowd of leaders and lights. Ryan sat quietly, the crystal glowing in his palm. He felt as though the galaxy had shifted around him. He was only a human, only an artist with a sketchbook. Yet the most celebrated figure in the stars had chosen to speak with him, to share pieces of herself that she had hidden from the world. As he walked back to his quarters on the station, he looked at the crystal. It pulsed faintly with his heartbeat, as though it already carried part of him inside. He wondered what it would show when he met Zyra again, and deep within he felt a strange certainty. Their meeting was not an accident. Something had begun, something larger than either of them, and it would change both their futures. Aurelian Station glowed brighter than any city on Earth. Its towers stretched like crystal mountains, and its halls echoed with the voices of thousands. For Ryan, each day felt like a dream. He had been invited to the greatest showcase in the galaxy, yet he was still unsure why he, a quiet human artist, had been chosen. He carried the memory crystal Zyra had given him. At night, when the station was quiet, he would hold it and feel its faint pulse. Sometimes he thought he saw flashes of his drawings inside the crystal, lines of light that looked like sketches floating in the air. But the true wonder was Zyra. She had spoken with him more than once now, and each time she made him feel as though his simple words and sketches mattered. She was the brightest star in the galaxy, yet she sought his company. He could not explain it, but he knew something rare was growing between them. The showcase was set to continue with the grand finale, an event said to draw leaders from across the Union. The hall had been prepared for weeks. Lights shimmered across the ceiling and an energy field powered the stage itself. Delegates filled their seats, eager to see the final display of culture and power. Ryan was seated again at the side, sketchbook in hand. He felt calmer this time, though still out of place. Around him were beings who had ruled empires, commanded fleets, and shaped worlds. Yet he was only an artist. The showcase began. Models from different worlds walked the stage, each representing their people. Some carried banners of light, others wore cloaks of energy, and some sang as they walked, their voices strong enough to shake the walls. The crowd roared in approval. Then Zyra stepped forward. She wore a garment woven of silver threads that glowed with living light. Her every movement was like a wave across water, graceful and calm. The hall fell silent, as if the galaxy itself held its breath. Ryan began sketching. His pencil moved quickly, trying to catch the flow of her steps, the shift of her eyes, the way her presence filled the hall. He was so focused that at first he did not notice the flicker above the stage. The energy field, which powered the lights and displays, began to pulse unevenly. A low hum filled the hall, and lines of light across the ceiling dimmed. Delegates looked up, murmuring. The music faltered, then the field collapsed. In an instant, the stage shattered with sparks of energy. A wave of unstable light swept across the hall, breaking apart the displays and shaking the floor. Cries filled the air as the great hall plunged into chaos. Delegates shouted in fear. Some species glowed brightly, forming protective barriers around themselves. Others panicked, rushing toward the exits. But the doors had sealed automatically when the field failed. No one could leave. Zira stood at the center of the broken stage, her gown torn by the blast of light. Her attendants rushed forward, but the unstable energy made the floor crack beneath them. For the first time, her calm expression showed fear. Ryan rose quickly. He had no advanced tools, no armor, no training in such events. Yet he had lived his life noticing small things, details others ignored. His eyes searched the hall and he saw it. A cluster of power conduits along the wall, still sparking. The collapse had cut the main flow, but not completely. If the conduits were reconnected, the field might stabilize. He ran toward them. The delegates shouted after him. Some laughed in disbelief. What could a human do when even advanced engineers were frozen in shock? But Ryan did not stop. His hands moved quickly, guided by instinct and memory. He had drawn machines before, not because he understood them fully, but because he studied their shapes and flows. Now that knowledge came alive. He tore off part of his sketchbook's binding wire and used it to bridge two broken conduits. Sparks burned his hands, but he pressed on. The hum in the hall shifted, steadying slightly. The energy above flickered, then calmed. Still, it was not enough. The field trembled, threatening to collapse again. Ryan looked around and saw loose metal supports from the stage. He dragged them over, wedging them into the conduit panel to hold the unstable lines in place. It was rough, dangerous, and far from perfect, but it worked. The hall brightened. The field stabilized, not fully, but enough to keep the walls from collapsing. The crowd gasped. Many had tried advanced tools to fix the system, but it was the human with a sketchbook and scraps of metal who had acted first. Zira's eyes found him. Through the fading sparks, she saw Ryan standing by the conduit. His hands burned, his clothes torn, but his eyes steady. He had not frozen. He had not fled. He had acted with a courage born not of training, but of heart. Guards and engineers rushed in at last, taking over the repairs. The doors opened, and the crowd spilled into the outer halls, still shaken but alive. Whispers spread quickly. They spoke of the human who had saved the hall, the human who had seen what others missed. Zira approached him. She moved past the guards who tried to surround her, past the delegates who wanted her attention. She stopped in front of Ryan, who was sitting on the floor holding his injured hands. "You acted when no one else did," she said softly. "I only did what I could," Ryan answered. His voice was calm, though his body ached. "I saw something broken. I tried to fix it." Her eyes shone with something deeper than admiration. For all her life, she had been told that perfection was strength, that beauty was power. Yet in this moment she saw a truth far greater. Humanity's strength was not perfection. It was the ability to adapt, to try to create solutions even in chaos. "You are not ordinary," Zira said. "You are human. That is greater than I ever understood." She helped him to his feet, her touch gentle. The crowd around them watched in silence. A galactic supermodel admired by millions was standing beside a wounded human artist as though he were her equal. For the first time, Zira felt no need to play the role of perfection. She felt something real, something alive, and she knew that her life, once ruled by light and admiration, had been changed forever by the simple courage of a human. Ryan said nothing more. He simply looked at her with quiet eyes, the same eyes that had drawn her as more than a symbol. In his gaze she felt seen, not as a star, not as a model, but as herself. And in that hall, among leaders and lights, a revelation began to spread. Humans were not weak. They were not ordinary. They were something the galaxy had overlooked for too long. The next morning, Aurelian Station was restless. News of the collapse at the Stellar Showcase had already spread across dozens of worlds. Messages flowed through the communication lines, some questioning the safety of the station, others demanding answers. But among all the reports, one detail was repeated again and again. A human saved the hall. Ryan had not expected any attention. After the engineers had repaired the conduits fully, he had returned quietly to his quarters. His hands were wrapped in simple bandages and his sketchbook rested on the table. He thought the event would soon be forgotten, yet by dawn his name was already spoken in languages he had never heard. Delegates requested to see him. Reporters from Galactic channels tried to enter his room. Security officers offered to escort him through the station. But Ryan refused all of it. He was not a hero, he told himself. He had only seen something broken and tried to fix it. That was all. Zira thought differently. She had spent the night replaying the moment in her mind, the instant when the hall began to fall apart, and the human had run forward while others froze. She remembered his burned hands, his steady eyes, and the way he spoke with no pride, only honesty. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. All her life, Zira had been surrounded by praise. Admirers told her she was perfect. Leaders told her she was a symbol, and crowds told her she was the brightest of her people. Yet in Rian, she saw someone who sought no praise, someone who acted from simple will. That to her was true strength. The Union Council announced that the final part of the Stellar Showcase would still take place. Delegates from across the stars would gather once more, not only to see the display of culture but to hear words from those who had faced the collapse. When Zira was asked to speak, she agreed. But she did not plan to speak as she had before. She had made a choice. The hall was rebuilt within hours, its walls restored and its stage shining as though nothing had happened. Yet beneath the surface, the memory of fear lingered. Delegates filled their seats with caution, whispering about the failure of the system. Reporters floated with their cameras, ready to record every word. Rian sat again at the side, his sketchbook in his lap. He had not wanted to come, but Zira herself had asked him, and he could not refuse. He felt uneasy under the stares of those around him. Some looked at him with respect, others with doubt, as if wondering how a human could have done what they had heard. The showcase began as before, but the mood was heavier. The models walked the stage, but the applause was quiet. Everyone was waiting for something else, for answers, for reassurance, for meaning. Finally, Zira stepped forward. The lights fell on her and the hall grew still. She wore no shining gown this time. Instead, she chose a simple garment of white cloth, unadorned, plain by galactic standards. Yet when she stood there, she seemed brighter than any jewel. She looked at the crowd, then at Rian, and then she spoke. Leaders of the Union, honored guests, people of many worlds, she began, her voice clear. Last night we saw how fragile even the greatest halls can be. We saw how quickly order can turn to fear. But we also saw something else, something greater. The hall was silent. Every word carried weight. When the energy field collapsed, many froze. Some panicked. I myself felt fear for the first time in years. But while all the brilliance of the galaxy stood still, a human moved. Gasps filled the hall. Cameras turned sharply toward Rian. He lowered his head, wishing he could vanish into his sketchbook. Yes, Zira continued, her voice steady. A human. One without wealth, without power, without armor or tools. He saw what was broken and acted with courage. He did not wait for orders. He did not seek reward. He acted because he could not stand aside. And in doing so, he saved us all. Whispers ran through the delegates. Some frowned, others nodded. But Zira's eyes did not leave Rian. All my life, she said, I have been praised for perfection. I have been told that beauty and grace are power. Yet last night I learned the truth. True power is not in perfection. It is in humanity, the ability to see, to adapt, to create, to act when none else will. That is what I witnessed. Her words struck the hall like a wave. For centuries, humans had been considered one of the youngest and weakest species of the Union. Their world was small, their technology still growing. Yet here was the most admired figure of the galaxy, declaring that humanity carried a strength greater than perfection. Zira lifted her hand and pointed toward Rian. This is the one who showed me this truth, she said, her voice rising. This human changed my future, and I declare before the galaxy that humanity must never again be called ordinary. The hall erupted. Some clapped, others shouted, but none were silent. Cameras captured the moment from every angle. Across the Union, on screens and crystals, billions watched as Zira made her declaration. Rian sat frozen. He had never wanted attention, never wanted to be more than an artist with a sketchbook. Yet now, the galaxy's brightest star had spoken his name in front of all. He felt a storm of emotions, fear, confusion, wonder. Zira stepped down from the stage and walked toward him. The crowd parted as she moved, eyes following her every step. She stopped before Rian and extended her hand. Stand with me, she said gently. For a moment he hesitated, but when he looked into her eyes he saw no demand, no command, only sincerity. Slowly, he placed his bandaged hand in hers and stood. The hall filled with light as the cameras turned on them both. Zira stood tall and radiant, and beside her stood Rian, plain and human yet holding her hand as though they were equals. The image spread across the galaxy. On distant worlds, children pointed at the screens and whispered the word, human, with new respect. Leaders who had once dismissed Earth now leaned forward, considering what this meant. And on Zira's people watched their brightest star speak of warmth instead of perfection. In that moment something shifted. Humanity was no longer just a young species on the edge of the Union. It had become a symbol of courage, creativity, and possibility. And for Rian, standing beside Zira in the Great Hall, the weight of the galaxy's gaze felt heavy, yet also strangely right. He had not asked for this, but perhaps it was meant to be. For Zira, there was no doubt. She had lived her life under endless admiration. Yet it was in the quiet sketches of a human that she had found meaning. And now, with the whole galaxy watching, she had spoken the truth that filled her heart. "You changed my future," she whispered again, though only Rian heard it. And in the silence that followed, he understood. The declaration of Zira spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, her words were repeated, recorded, and shared on every channel. On great ships traveling through the stars, crews watched her stand beside a human. On distant colonies, settlers paused their work to see the image of Rian holding her hand. Even on Earth, where most people had never expected to play an important role in the Union, the sight of one of their own filled them with pride and wonder. For the first time, the galaxy spoke of humanity not as a weak, untested species, but as something more. Some called humans reckless, others called them brave, but all agreed they could no longer be ignored. Rian, however, felt none of this glory. After the event ended, he returned to his small quarters on the station. His bandages still covered his hands, and his sketchbook rested on the table as always. He had never wished to be at the center of attention. He only wanted to draw, to see the world through lines and shadows. Yet now billions of eyes were on him. He sat quietly, trying to put his thoughts on paper. He drew the hull, the broken conduits, and the faces of those who had watched him. He drew Zira as she looked at him, not as a star or a model, but as a person who had spoken to him with honesty. And in the middle of the page he drew himself, small but steady, holding a single spark of light. A soft sound pulled him from his work. The door opened and Zira entered. She wore no glowing garment now, only a simple cloak, her hair tied back. Yet even without the lights of the stage, she seemed brighter than the station itself. "You hide from the galaxy," she said gently. "I am not made for the galaxy," Rian answered. "I am just a man with a sketchbook." Zira sat across from him, her eyes calm. "The galaxy disagrees. They have already sent messages to the Union Council. Some demand that humans be given more respect. Some ask to see Earth join new projects, all because of what you did." Rian shook his head. "I did nothing grand. I only fixed what I saw was broken." "That is why it matters," Zira said. "When others saw danger, you saw a problem that could be solved. That is the gift of your kind. Do not dismiss it." For a moment they sat in silence. Outside the window, stars burned bright against the black of space. Ships moved like sparks across the void. The galaxy was wide and endless, yet in that small room the world felt clear. "Zira," Rian said slowly. "Why me? Out of all the beings you could choose to speak with, why me?" She smiled faintly. "Because you see what others do not. You look past the light and find the shadow. You look past the surface and find the heart. When you drew me, I felt seen for the first time. Not as a symbol, not as perfection, but as myself. You changed me." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Rian lowered his eyes to the sketchbook. He had never thought his art could touch someone so deeply. And yet here she was, the brightest star in the galaxy, telling him that his quiet lines had changed her future. The days that followed were filled with new challenges. Delegates requested meetings with Rian, asking him to speak of Earth, of humans, of their ways of thinking. Some treated him with respect, others with suspicion, but all wanted to know more. Zira stood beside him in every hall. When leaders doubted his worth, she reminded them of his courage. When reporters asked why she praised a human, she repeated her words, "Because he showed me true strength." Slowly, opinions began to shift. Humans were no longer invisible in the Union. Earth received new offers of cooperation. Scientists were invited to join research teams. Artists were asked to share their vision with other worlds. For the first time, humanity had a seat at the galactic table, but Rian remained the same. He still carried his sketchbook, still drew in the quiet hours, still saw the galaxy not as a stage of power but as lines and shapes waiting to be captured. The only difference was that now, Zira often sat beside him, watching with interest as he worked. One evening, as the station prepared for another council gathering, Zira spoke to him once more. "Do you know what they call you now?" she asked. "No," Ryan replied, not looking up from his drawing. "They call you the artist of the galaxy," she said. "The human who draws what others cannot see." Ryan laughed softly. "That sounds larger than me." "Perhaps," Zira said. "But sometimes the galaxy needs names to remind them of what matters." At the gathering, the Union Council announced a new initiative. They would send representatives of every species, including humans, to travel together across the stars. The goal was not war or trade, but understanding, sharing ideas, art, and stories. It would be the first mission of its kind, and they asked Zira to lead it as a symbol of unity. Zira agreed, but only on one condition. "Ryan comes with me," she said. The council hesitated, but the weight of her words was heavy. They could not refuse. And so it was decided Zira, the star of Ceres, and Ryan, the human artist, would travel together, carrying with them the hope of many worlds. When the day came to depart, crowds filled the docks of Aurelian Station. Ships from dozens of species lined the sky, their lights shining like a new constellation. At the center was the vessel chosen for the journey, sleek and silver, its wings spread like a bird ready to fly. Ryan stood with his sketchbook watching the crowd. He felt nervous, uncertain if he belonged in such a grand moment. But when Zira stepped beside him and took his hand, the fear lessened. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I do not know," Ryan admitted. "But I will try." "That is enough," Zira said. Together, they boarded the ship. As the engines lit and the vessel rose into the sky, the crowd cheered. Across the galaxy, screens showed the image of a human and an alien walking side by side, beginning a journey that would carry hope to the stars. Inside the ship, Ryan sat by the window, sketching the view of Aurelian Station growing smaller behind them. Beside him, Zira watched, her eyes warm. "You still draw," she said softly. "I always will," Ryan replied, "because drawing helps me see. And now there is so much more to see." Zira smiled. "Then show me the galaxy through your eyes." And so their journey began, not as a story of perfection, but as a story of humanity, creativity, and connection. A human artist and an alien star walking together into the unknown, carrying with them the truth that had changed them both. That true strength is not in power or beauty, but in the courage to see, to act, and to inspire. And in the hearts of those who watched them depart, a new thought bloomed. Perhaps humanity's place among the stars was only just beginning.